And just to wrap a bow on this trade deadline talk, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on biggest winner, biggest loser. Let's start with your biggest winner. Who do you think is the biggest winner after this trade deadline?
Who? Biggest winner is either Kyle Lowry or the Miami Heat. I think Kyle, or maybe no, the Raptors fan or the Miami Heat. Kyle Lowry, I saw a lot of people on Twitter. I follow a lot of hockey people, which means I follow a lot of Raptors fans. I'm like low key on Raptors Twitter, which is kind of weird. But I saw a lot of Raptors fans saying that he might be the greatest Raptor ever in the history of the organization. So, and that's a fan base that loves Kyle Lowry and what he's brought to that team for a long time. And I don't think Kyle Lowry really wanted to leave either. If you listen to those post-game comments, the game right before the deadline, it really didn't sound like he wanted to leave. And even though the team isn't that good, maybe this will energize them to get a little bounce back and get into the play-in. So we'll see. But I think the Raptor fan who loves Kyle Lowry will get to see him for another – probably 20 games, 30 games ish, and maybe he'll leave at the end of the season. But it's the rest of the season at least.
Yeah, my biggest winner. I mean, yeah, I'd say Miami is right there. You add Nemanja Bjelica, who I can say that I can pronounce that name all day long because it's just what I do these days. I'm just great at pronunciation. But yeah, I think with those additions, Miami is right there. They're going to be in the mix. And I'd also say Denver. You add JaVale McGee, there's your rim protector. You go ahead and you add Aaron Gordon, who's somebody who can play the 3 or the 4. He can play small ball. He could be at the 5 if you need to be. He's grown into a better defender. And offensively, his game is there. He can step out and shoot the ball. And then you add an Eric Gordon. I think that's going to be crucial. I mean, you have to give up Gary Harris to Orlando, but I think Denver, for what they want to do, they understand that, the window in the West for them is open. If LeBron is compromised, if Anthony Davis is compromised in any way, it's wide open. Is anybody really believing in the Jazz to go to the NBA Finals? Probably not. Denver was right there. They were on the cusp, and I think they're going to be that team alongside the Clippers who looks at the Lakers and says, hey, if that team is not at full strength, we need to take advantage, and we got to take them out and get to the NBA Finals, because I harp back to what Jimmy Butler said in the bubble. The problem at the end of the day, the test is LeBron James. That's who you have to beat. That's who you have to take out if you want to go ahead and win a championship. And as you mentioned earlier, we just can't bet against LeBron James. You just can't. At the end of the day, if he is healthy and that team is there, they're going to be a favorite. It's going to be a hard time picking against the Lakers in the West. But I have to think if either of them go into the postseason and are not where we think they should be in terms of health, the West is open, and I think teams like the Clippers and especially teams like the Nuggets, knowing they were knocking at the door last season, this is their chance to get to the NBA Finals and go from there. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets may be waiting for you, but still, this is your chance. And if you're a team like the Denver Nuggets, I think you've made some great moves and kind of building that team and making sure that it's strong enough to make a deep run.
Yeah, and my loser would be Markelle Fultz. Because the only guy left.
Yeah.
Everybody else got a first-round pick. Evan Fournier got 2 seconds back. They didn't get a first-round pick for him. They're like, screw it, we'll still trade him. Nothing for Markelle Fultz.
Yeah, my biggest loser is going to have to be Orlando if they don't get Cade Cunningham. If they do all this and they don't get that first overall pick, then it's all.
Houston and Minnesota, they're worse than Orlando.
That's my thinking. So this fire sale, they're thinking that they are going to bottom out and they will catch up to Houston and Minnesota at some point. But if you don't get Cade Cunningham, all of these moves to me are inconsequential. But, they tried it. I mean, they had this core for a few years. It didn't work. And sometimes you just got to blow it up. And I'd also say the biggest loser is Terrence Ross. I mean, think about this. He's been on Twitter the past couple of days and just giving us gem after gem. He's now the oldest player on the team. And I think Terrence Ross might not even be 30 yet. So when you think about what he's had to endure, and just Orlando, God, those days of Shaquille O'Neal and Penny and that trip to the finals where Olajuwon and them swept them and Shaq just never gets over the fact that, Dream got him. Orlando, just a long ways away from that. And it feels even a long ways away from Dwight Howard and going to the finals back in, 2010? Or I don't know what Orlando's doing. Hopefully they get Cade Cunningham. But Chris, you're right. If Houston or Minnesota ends up with that first overall pick, then Orlando, it's just kind of like purgatory for the next couple of years.
Well, they were kind of in NBA purgatory where they were always like the 8 or the 7 seed that had to play against Cleveland and Boston.
Yes.
Now they're in purgatory where they're not bad enough to get the first overall pick. They are in, in the draft lottery era, they're in where the Knicks have been for the last how many years. They were never bad enough to get the first overall pick, but they were never good enough to make a playoff run at the deadline. And that's where Orlando will be next year, assuming they don't get the first overall pick.
Man, I mean, that's the time. The trade deadline really shows you who's a buyer, who's a seller, who's trying to make moves, get their way up to the top, and who's content with kind of just, calling it a season and getting themselves and securing potentially a top 5 pick in the next NBA draft.